Welcome to Expose Affair. Please subscribe my channel for interesting affair stories. For years into our marriage, I thought I had understood my wife, her moods, her silences, and even her flair for the dramatic. But nothing could have prepared me for that night, the party, and the 5 words that would change everything. We were at a charity gala, one of those upscale, dimly lit events filled with crystal chandeliers, hollow laughter, and people who sipped champagne more than they spoke. My wife, Camilla, lived for these gatherings. It was her world, curated, polished, and full of old money charm. I, on the other hand, was a public school teacher with a middle-class heart and a distaste for pretense. Still, I came for her. I always did. She wore a backless emerald dress that shimmered when she moved. She hadn't said much on the drive over, just checked her lipstick in the mirror and typed away on her phone. Once inside, she peeled off from my side the second we entered, floating effortlessly from one circle of socialites to another. I stood near the bar, nursing a glass of bourbon and watching her from a distance. She hadn't introduced me to anyone. She hadn't even looked my way since we arrived. An hour passed, maybe 2. She laughed, tossed her hair, touched some guy's chest as she leaned in to whisper something in his ear. I clenched my jaw and looked away. That's when I felt a hand on mine. Dance with me now. I turned. It was Harper, Camilla's closest friend, though she often introduced her as just a colleague from the foundation. Harper was the opposite of Camilla in nearly every way. Earthy, grounded, with a natural kind of beauty that didn't beg for attention, but commanded it anyway. I hesitated. I don't really. Dance, she repeated, firmer this time. Her eyes flicked toward Camilla, who was still draped over the same man. She's not looking, but I am. She tugged me toward the dance floor. The music was soft, Sinatra or something like it. Harper moved close, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder, her eyes locked on mine. "You're not invisible," she said after a long silence. "What?" "You looked like you were trying to disappear. You shouldn't. Not for her. Not for anyone." I blinked. My throat tightened. "Camilla doesn't even know you're here," she added. "She used to," I said, my voice low. "She used to look at me like I was the only one in the room." Harper's brow furrowed. "Then she's a fool." We danced in silence for a moment. Her touch was gentle but steady. I couldn't remember the last time someone looked at me the way she did. Like I mattered, like I was present, like I was seen. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Because I've watched you disappear for years," she said. "I've watched you shrink while she grew into something cold and unrecognizable. She's ambitious. She always has been. That's not ambition. That's disregard," she said. "And you don't deserve that." I didn't reply. I couldn't. I just stared at her, this woman who'd always hovered at the edges of our lives. Polite, kind, reserved. And now here she was, standing in the center of my storm, offering me an anchor. As the song ended, I felt something shift inside me. A crack, a pull, a whisper of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in months. Worth. When we stepped off the dance floor, Camilla was finally looking. Her smile faltered. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She excused herself from the man she was talking to and walked toward us. "Harper," she said flatly, "what are you doing?" "Dancing," Harper said coolly, "with someone who deserves to be danced with." Camilla looked at me like I was a pet who'd wandered too far from her leash. "Can we talk?" I nodded, following her into a corner near the balcony. "What the hell was that?" she hissed. "You tell me." I said, "You've ignored me all night." Harper saw me. "You didn't." Her eyes flashed. "You're making this into something it's not." "No." I said, "You already did that when you decided I was only worth your time in private." She scoffed. "You think one little dance changes things?" "No," I said, "but it reminded me that I'm allowed to feel like I exist. I shouldn't need your permission." Camilla looked stunned for a moment. Then she laughed, a short, brittle sound. "So what now? You want a divorce?" "To run off with my friend." "No," I said, "I just want to stop being an afterthought." She didn't say anything. She just turned and walked away. I didn't follow. That night, I stayed until the end. Harper and I didn't dance again, but she stood beside me at the bar and talked, really talked, about everything. She didn't ask me to leave Camilla. She didn't ask me for anything, but she gave me something all the same. A choice. 6 months later, the divorce was quiet. Camilla moved on fast, as I suspected she would. By then, I had already moved too, emotionally, mentally, and quite literally. I'd found a place near the school, modest but warm, real. Harper visited often, not romantically, not at first. We cooked, we talked, we rebuilt. And one rainy evening, as I played an old vinyl in the kitchen, and she laughed at my terrible attempt at salsa, she reached for my hand and said, "Dance with me now." And this time I did, not because I felt unseen, but because I finally felt chosen. And that made all the difference. The divorce went through faster than I expected. Camilla didn't fight it. She barely blinked. I think a part of her was relieved, free to chase whatever version of herself she thought she deserved, with whichever crowd applauded the loudest. Me, I found a quiet place on the edge of the city. A 2-bedroom with creaky floors and windows that let in just enough morning light to make coffee feel like a ceremony. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't sparkle, but it felt real. Harper visited sometimes. Then more often, we didn't rush anything. She wasn't rebound. She wasn't fantasy. She was just honest. And after years of living in a world of polished masks and polite lies, that was gold. One Friday evening, rain pattered against the windows, soft jazz played in the background, and I was halfway through cooking a stir-fry I was definitely ruining. She stood in the doorway, barefoot, wine in hand, watching me like she was seeing something more than a man fumbling with garlic. "You're better without her," she said. "I'm better because of you," I replied without thinking. She didn't answer, just smiled, set her glass down, and walked over to me. She took the spatula from my hand, turned the burner off, and looked me dead in the eyes. Then she said it. Those same 5 words that changed everything the first time. "Dance with me now." But this time, there was no crowd, no jealousy, no performance. Just us, 2 people who had been broken in the quiet and rebuilt in the silence that followed. We swayed slowly in the middle of the kitchen, between burnt onions and forgotten music, her head resting against my chest. And in that moment, I realized something. Camilla once loved a version of me who fit neatly beside her in a photo. But Harper loved the version of me that didn't need fixing. She didn't pull me out of the darkness. She stood beside me until I lit the fire myself. And when she whispered, "You're not invisible anymore," I believed her, because for the first time in years, I wasn't. I was seen. I was chosen. And I was finally dancing, for me,